Okay, so we're still in Unit 6, Photosynthesis and Cellular Respiration, and this is Lesson 2, and it's actually the last lesson in this packet. So let's get started. You're going to turn to page 21 in your note packet, and we're going to start with cellular respiration. We know that cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria of plant and animal cells. And we learned that when we talked about cells. It's how organisms use glucose and oxygen. It's created in photosynthesis to create energy called ATP. So let's look at what happens here. Let's start with cellular respiration. So we breathe out CO2, which then is used by plants along with water from the roots and energy from the sun to create glucose and oxygen. Glucose is then used by the cells, and the oxygen we breathe in. So it is a mutualistic relationship because we're benefiting and the environment, the plants and trees are benefiting. So let's look at the respiration reaction. I told you once before that the cellular respiration reaction is the opposite of photosynthesis. So C6H12O6 is glucose, and you have to recognize that as such. When you see C6H12O6, you should know that that is glucose. Plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So what is ATP? Well, I just told you it's adenosine triphosphate. It's made up of an adenine group, which I'm going to label A, and a ribose, which is the pink, and 3 phosphates, which I will label C. And that equals energy. Where is energy in ATP? Well, ATP is comprised of low energy, which is ADP, adenosine diphosphate, plus we then add another phosphate. So plus another phosphate. Okay? So here is your ADP diphosphate. We add another phosphate. We get ATP, okay, adenosine triphosphate, and that equals energy. Energy is in the bond that attaches the last phosphate to ADP. So what happens is that the mitochondria uses the energy that it gets from the breakdown of glucose to bond that last phosphate to the ADP to make ATP. ATP's energy is used in every organism to accomplish the life processes. And we talked about those in another unit. Active transport, growth, regulation, synthesis. Remember, synthesis means to make, digestion, cell reproduction, and excretion. So let's compare the two side by side. Photosynthesis. The function is to capture energy from the sun. It happens in the chloroplast. The reactants are carbon dioxide and water. We breathe out carbon dioxide, the plants use it, and they take up water in their roots, and they produce glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration, its function is to release energy in the form of ATP, and this happens in the mitochondria. Notice how the products of photosynthesis are the reactants for cellular respiration. So glucose and oxygen, which is what plants produce, is used by us in our cells, okay? Well, and other organisms as well, and produce carbon dioxide and water. Just to recap, carbon dioxide and water plus energy from the sun yields glucose and oxygen. This is photosynthesis. Cellular respiration is the opposite of that. It is glucose and oxygen yielding carbon dioxide, water, and a whole lot of energy. So this is the ultimate transfer of energy. The sun makes glucose, and we use the glucose to make ATP. So everything starts from the sun. But we can't use it until it's been transferred into ATP, because we can't make our own food. Only plants can, which are autotrophs. Okay, so now you're going to turn to page 27 and you're going to continue. We're going to look at cellular respiration now, specifically a little bit closer, because there's two kinds. There is aerobic, so aerobic sounds like air, which means it uses oxygen, and then there's anaerobic, not using oxygen. So aerobic means with oxygen, anaerobic means without oxygen. In aerobic respiration, we use oxygen, as I said, and here's the kicker of this, and creates 36 ATP molecules at a time. That's a whole lot of energy. In anaerobic respiration, without air, it does not use oxygen, and it only makes 2 ATP at a time. And it creates extra waste products. So, it doesn't take a genius to figure out which one of these is more beneficial. Clearly aerobic respiration, because you're producing a whole lot more energy. Now let's look though at anaerobic respiration. As I said, anaerobic respiration means no oxygen. And there's two types of fermentation. So two types of fermentation that occur. One is called alcohol fermentation. That's glucose without oxygen produces ATP, alcohol, carbon dioxide, and water. And this is how they make wine. Okay? We're actually going to do a fermentation lab. And then you have lactic acid fermentation, which occurs in your body when you partake in strenuous exercise. It's when glucose, in the presence of no oxygen, produces ATP, lactic acid, carbon dioxide, and water. So let's recap the main points between the two. Aerobic uses oxygen. It produces 36 ATP per cycle, and it occurs in the mitochondria. It is the norm for human being cells, and it only produced the waste products of carbon dioxide and water. Anaerobic does not use oxygen. It only produces 2 ATP per cycle. This occurs in the cytoplasm versus the mitochondria, and it occurs during strenuous exercise in humans. And it produces lactic acid / alcohol in addition to CO2 and water. What do they both have in common? Well, they both use glucose as a reactant. They both make ATP, although clearly varying amounts, and they both produce carbon dioxide and water. So this is 36, this is 2, this is oxygen, this is no oxygen, and this occurs in the mitochondria, this occurs in the cytoplasm. And this is what they have in common. Okay. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your day.